Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alex Radford. I'm an English solicitor with my law in Spain, Spanish law firm based here in Spain and with offices across Spain. Today, we're going to be talking about the taxation for digital nomads. And I'm very pleased to welcome Pablo from MDG Advisors. Hi there, Pablo. How are you?
Hi, Alex. I'm very well. And you?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good. Okay, so Pablo, we're just going to have a little recap. So the new law was introduced in 2002 on the 28th of December, and this basically was a law to promote ecosystems for emerging companies. And what it did purposely, of course, was to add a new category of workers, and we now know them as the international teleworkers, also known as digital nomads. So that's what we've already had a session talking about digital nomads, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. But basically, the digital nomad is someone who, have a look at our previous YouTube channel videos, and you'll see the video there about the digital nomad visa. But in essence, if you are working for a company overseas outside of Spain, and you're an employee, and that company has been in existence for more than 12 months, and you've had a relationship with it for more than 3 months, then you can apply for the digital nomad visa. And you can apply for that from Spain, or you can apply from that from the UK. If you are a professional and you have clients based outside of Spain, then again, you can come to Spain, you can apply for the digital nomad visa, and you've got to prove that you can basically carry out the work from Spain, that there's sufficient IT systems in place. And as a professional, as opposed to an employee, so I consider a professional, I'd say someone that's got a qualification, someone who is self-employed, solicitor, accountant, IT person, etc., psychologists I was speaking with today. So they prove that they have clients based abroad outside of Spain, and they can also apply for the digital nomad visa. So we're talking about employees and people who are self-employed. The people that are self-employed can carry out work of up to 20% of their billing here in Spain as well, but no more. So the majority of their clients have to be based outside of Spain, and they have to invoice out companies outside of Spain, and the employees would continue to be employed for that UK company or a company outside of the EU, and they would receive their monies. What do you have to do to prove that you're a digital nomad? One, you've got to get a letter from your company in which they confirm that they've been in business for more than 12 months, that you've had a relationship with them for at least 3 months, and that there are sufficient IT systems in place to allow you to work for them in Spain, and that they authorize you to do so. So that's a nice conversation you've got to have with your employer. But if we put that together, we typically would put that together in a letter in English and Spanish, and then you would come to Spain. We'd prepare the other documents as well for you, which you've got to apply for a criminal record certificate for basically covering the last 5 years. And if you've got a criminal record certificate for the last 5 years, then that's very positive, and that's what they want to see when we present the application. You also will need private medical insurance. And if you're an employee, you have to prove that you will continue to pay social security contributions in your home country, and then you will pay taxation in Spain. And that's where Pablo comes in. So Pablo, we've known for many years. We worked with his firm for quite some time. And Pablo, we've had lots of questions through.
Yep.
And I know everyone's fairly busy talking to digital nomads at the moment about the processes and the systems and the taxes. But today it's all about tax. So question number one, Pablo. My employer has allowed me to work in Spain, and I have my digital nomad visa. What rate of tax do I pay?
Well, thanks, Alex. The digital nomad visa allows the individual to access a special tax regime, which is commonly known as the Beckham regime. Okay, this Beckham regime was set up when David Beckham signed for Real Madrid, so it takes its name from there. This regime is regulated on Article 93 of the personal income tax in Spain. Okay, and the main advantage that it's got is that the income is taxed at a flat rate of 24%, okay, until 600,000 euros. But there are no personal allowances or deductions. Okay, in Spain, the general personal income tax regime taxes at the progressive tax rate. Okay, and this tax rate can goes up until 47%. Okay, so in our experience, this Beckham regime is very convenient for high-profile employees. Okay, and the Beckham regime application requires certain formalities. So we suggest or advise always to seek for tax advice beforehand.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pablo. So, well, that's an amazing rate, just a flat rate of 24%. Okay, noted, no personal allowances. But wow, someone could come here, earn 500,000 euros. They're probably paying a lot more in income tax in their home country, but they come to Spain, sunny Spain, and they only pay 24%. So I was going to ask you, how is the income tax calculated? Well, it's not. It's just a flat rate of 24%.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's just a flat rate.
And so you've got an employee and they're receiving a salary monthly. Would they have to submit annual or quarterly tax returns here in Spain?
Personal income tax in Spain, regardless you are under the special regime or the general one, okay, the personal income tax declaration is submitted from April up to 30th June each year, relating the previous calendar year.
So someone comes to Spain this year. We apply for their digital nomad visa. They either get that in their home country or they get that here in Spain. They start working, and this year they would become a Spanish tax resident because there's more than 183 days left in this year. So they would then present their tax return next year, as you said, between April and June. And Pablo, just tell me, what are the basic requirements to qualify for Spanish residency?
For the Spanish tax residency, there are three main requirements for an individual to be considered as tax resident in our country. Okay, the first is that the individual stays more than 183 days per calendar year. Okay, the second requirement is when the source of income, the main source of income or economic interest is located in Spain. Okay, or third requirement is if the spouse and descendants, okay, reside permanently in our country. And this third requirement admits proof to the contrary.
Yeah. So basically, I'm fully aware of friends, clients who have got spouses living here, but they spend less than 183 days in Spain because they are working and living most of their time abroad. So I agree with you. It's and again, each personal circumstances are different, so it's important to take specific advice on your personal circumstances. So Pablo, we talk about employees. They would submit their tax return at the end, the year after they've arrived here. What about a professional? So, I'm an English solicitor and a Spanish lawyer. I choose to live in Spain full time, and I'm not a digital nomad visa. I live here. But if an English solicitor or an attorney from America came to Spain and wanted to live here and invoice their clients, because they're the professional as opposed to the employee, would they have to submit quarterly tax returns?
That's correct. This is what we call here an autonomous, which is basically a freelance, okay? And the freelance in Spain acts as same as a company, okay? So the freelance is got more obligations than a regular employee, okay? A freelance needs to submit quarterly VAT returns and prepayments on the personal income tax, okay? So every quarter it needs to be calculated, the VAT return, okay? Plus the personal income tax declaration from April to June, okay?
Okay, so that's and also, Pablo, as you know, they would come here. They would be based in Spain. They would put their name at the top of the invoice, their address, their NIE number, which is their famous Spanish tax number, and they issue that invoice. And because they're providing professional services, they'll charge VAT, or EVA, tax at 21%, which is the current rate in 2023. They pay that 21% rate, and then they have to declare. They also have to pay tax, EVA, submit EVA returns on that quarterly basis as well as their income. Yeah,
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, excellent. So when I arrive in Spain, and as I will be working, shall I register with the Spanish tax authorities straight away?
Well, that's a complex question. Okay, it's a very open question. But if anyone relocates to Spain, okay, the registration before the Spanish tax authorities must be done as soon as the individual knows that he or she will become tax resident in our country. So basically, as soon as you know that you will meet any of the 3 previously commented requirements, okay, a communication to the Spanish tax authorities must be completed.
Okay, so Pablo, so someone arriving in February, we get their visa, the digital nomad visa for them now. They come to Spain, they start working. They're going to obviously they notify the Spanish tax authorities. They're registered and they submit the tax returns next year. What about someone who arrives on the 1st of August? The plan is they're going to be working for their overseas employer, but they won't be here for 183 days. Will they have to, imagine if it's a professional as well, would they have to submit quarterly tax returns?
Well, in that specific scenario, okay, the individual would be considered as non-resident in our country, okay, depending on the home country of the individual, okay, that person might be obliged to submit taxes in Spain as well. But that depends on each double tax treaty agreement. Okay, so each situation needs to be looked at in detail. We cannot give general advice on that one. Okay,
that's fine. That's fine. But I think, generally speaking, on the tax side of things, you've got to be fair to the tax system, and the tax system will be fair to you. That's my experience with taxes. No one likes paying taxes, but you've got to be fair to them, and try not to be a tax dodger. We always talk about mitigating tax, not dodging tax. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Spain, like I say, I moved to Spain in February. I've declared myself as a Spanish taxpayer, and I'm an employee. Does that mean I stop paying tax in my home country?
Well, as I said before, okay, that depends on each double treaty agreement first, okay, and then on the tax legislation of each country. So just to give you an idea, if a UK resident relocates to Spain, okay, let's say in February, technically that person will be considered as tax resident in Spain for that year because he or she will stay more than 6 months. But depending on UK tax legislation, he or she might also need to pay taxes back in the UK. Okay, at MDG Advisors, we can only advise on Spanish tax legislation, so we cannot conclude if that person would be required to file the taxes in UK as well.
Okay, so prior to this call, and Seb and I was talking to an English accountant, and we had this very same question, and basically the advice from the English side was again, if someone is moving to Spain, then it's important that they take English accountancy advice as well. I can tell you about my personal experience. When I left the UK, I was an employee of a law firm. I moved here in May. The English tax year finishes in April, and the Spanish tax year obviously starts in January and finishes in December. So I actually applied to the UK authorities for a tax rebate of the income tax that I'd paid from January to April, and I did get that back. And that was part of the double tax treaty. In England, so in Spain, you're either a tax resident or you're not, because of the 183 days. Whereas in England, it's a little bit more complicated and probably more difficult to. It's not quite as cut and dry as Spain. So it is important to take UK tax advice from a specialist accountant. So, will my employer pay tax on my salary in my home country, or will they pay it in Spain? Well, the answer to that is basically that when you come to Spain as an employee, you are going to carry on paying social security contributions in your home country, but you pay tax in Spain, depending on what we've just talked about and when you become a resident. Okay. So, Pablo, we've got some other questions that came through.
Okay.
Will digital nomads be taxed as non-resident? And will this be the case for as long as they hold a digital nomad visa? So I think we've answered that one. If you're here for more than 183 days, then you're going to be taxed as a Spaniard would be, as a Spanish tax resident. Would this be a fixed rate of 24% up to 600,000? Yes. Would we be exempt on paying tax in Spain on other worldwide assets?
That's an important. Sorry for interrupting, Alex. But that's an important advantage of the Beckham regime. Okay, the Beckham regime only taxes the Spanish assets, okay, and the Spanish income, except salaries worldwide. For instance, if a person in the Beckham regime is got a capital gain happening abroad, selling a property in UK, having some financial income in international banks, etc., as long as that person is under the Beckham regime, that income will not be taxed in our country. Okay, so that's another advantage of the special regime, and which makes it very convenient for international background clients.
Okay, so let's just to clarify on what you talked about there. So if a UK, so we're talking to people at the moment, a couple of digital nomads, they own their own company, they can relocate to Spain, and they can provide all the documentation to become a digital nomad visa. They are thinking of selling their property, and they'll sell it this year, but they're going to reinvest all of the monies they make from their Spanish property, from the sale of their UK property, into a Spanish property. So is it correct that they would therefore not pay capital gains tax here in Spain on the sale of their UK property? Yeah,
that's correct. As long as they are under the Beckham regime, correct.
So basically, Pablo, as long as they register for income tax under the Beckham regime here, the other tax that they may be liable to pay for continues to be a liability for them in their home country.
Yes, that's correct. In that specific example, okay, for the capital gain of the property sold back in UK, okay, they might need to pay taxes only in UK, and that they need to check with their UK tax advisors, okay? But in Spain, they won't. They don't even need to include that information on the personal income tax declaration. Nope.
Okay, and we're talking about UK, but actually when we talk about UK now, we really now that refers to non-Europeans. So what we say relates to the UK also relates to non-Europeans. Okay. So would we be exempt on paying tax in Spain on other worldwide assets? We've talked about that. Will we be exempt from the requirement of filling in Modelo 720?
That's correct.
So they wouldn't have to pay, they wouldn't, again, if they've registered under the Beckham regime as a digital nomad visa, they wouldn't have to they wouldn't have to submit Modelo 720. And just for everyone's information, Modelo 720 is an obligation by the Spanish tax authorities, Pablo, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you've got assets over the value of 50,000 euros abroad, so outside of Spain, you have to declare them in Spain. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So actually, paying taxation under the Beckham regime sounds quite sexy compared to digital nomad,
Yes.
Okay. Then is there any clarification? Someone says, is there any clarification to the rights of dependents and whether they can work in Spain? Well, actually, yes. Dependents of digital nomad visas can work in Spain. Okay. We've had an email through from people who are basically, they work in Gibraltar, they want to live in Spain and continue to work for either companies in Gibraltar or companies in Spain. And they asked about the double tax treaties in place. But basically, in response to their questions, it's really, you are going to invoice your company wherever they are located, whether it's Gibraltar, Spain, or Dubai. Sorry, Gibraltar, UK, or Dubai. And your company is not going to pay tax on your income. You're going to pay tax on your income here in Spain, as Pablo said, at the rate of 24%. And we would register you under that basis. But your company, wherever it's located, and so long as it's got an agreement with Spain, would continue to pay social security contributions. And we just have to look into that and talk about that first. So it's also always worth having a conversation about your specific requirements before you do actually apply for the visa. For the digital nomad visa, Pablo, the minimum income is €2,333. That's gross. And then there's extra monies that people would require for dependents and spouses. I think on the tax side, are there any other comments, Pablo, from you on tax?
Not from my side.
So thank you everyone for attending and listening in. And what we'd like to do now is open the session for any further questions that anyone may have. We've had a question here, and it says, if you are self-employed, so if you've got a question, please put it in the chat. It says, if you are self-employed and pay yourself via owner's draw dividends, American K1 income, do you qualify for digital nomad? So you're self-employed and you pay yourself dividends. Would that work?
I mean, the way you receive the income or the kind of income that you receive, okay, does not affect the Beckham regime, okay? I mean, the main requirements for the Beckham regime are that you apply within 6 months from arrival to our country, okay, and that you come to Spain either because of the working contract or because of being digital nomad or a director of the company. So yes, you can receive dividends, and that shouldn't affect.
Okay, and in effect, in answer to the question, is that yes, you would write yourself a letter saying that you can work remotely for your own business. Okay, so we've got another question here. Would a spouse of a digital nomad need to register as autonomo if self-employed in Spain?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
They would. And basically, the spouse, so one of the advantages of coming to Spain to apply for the digital nomad visa is that the visa will be granted for the duration of the contract you have with your company abroad, or once you've been granted the visa, you can apply for that visa to be granted for 3 years. Okay, and during that period, your spouses and dependents are allowed to work. And Pablo, I presume, would the spouse be taxed on the Beckham regime as well, or would they be taxed for personal income tax according to Spanish law?
The startup legislation, which, as you said before, it was approved on 28th December, okay, opened the possibility for spouses and descendants, okay, to apply also for the Beckham regime when the main individual applies for it, okay? So the application of the Beckham regime is per individual, and each application needs to be fulfilled by each person.
Okay, that's fine. So I've got another question here. If I had savings based in England, would I have to pay tax in Spain on these savings? For example, if I've got £200,000 in a fixed savings account.
The answer to that question is no, because you are taxed in Spain as a non-resident, so you are only taxed for your Spanish assets.
Okay, so basically, I haven't got any Spanish assets. All I've got is income coming in, but I've got assets throughout the rest of the world. I'm only taxed on Spanish assets and Spanish income.
That's correct.
Okay, which is great.
Alex, can I make a point here
yes.
on the Beckham regime? Because
yeah.
It seems that there was a bit of a rush to approve this startup legislation. Okay, and when it was approved, there's a lot of controversy between tax professionals because the Beckham regime does not allow, it is supposed not to allow freelancers, okay, to access the regime. Now, whilst it seems that the digital nomad visa, it does. Okay, so we're still waiting for the tax authorities to clarify whether it is possible or not to apply that regime for freelancers.
Right. Okay. So freelancers, as in professionals, but employees, you're happy that it's 24%.
Employees is fine. Employees absolutely fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So freelancers, someone working remotely here for various clients based outside of Spain, and or up to 20% of their clients or billing based here in Spain. Okay, that's interesting. Well, yeah. Well, as soon as you've got some more news about that, if you update us, and we will place that on our social media channels.
Okay.
Okay.
Will do.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Hasta luego.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.